We're going to be starting the process of converting this old Kawasaki robot that I bought for peanuts on the dollar into a full-fledged welding robot. Now, this machine is not made to be a welding robot. It can spot weld, but it has no firmware related to actually welding, so we're going to see how this is going to go. My plan is to use all parts that I have laying around my shop. This right here is the welder I'm planning on using. As you can see, it's a Miller CP200. This thing's probably from the 70s or the 80s, and then we got a wire feeder that's been getting rained on for months. So my idea here is that I'm going to take this and then mount it to the top of the arm and make a little torch mount and adjust the torch a bit, and then go run the trigger signals to the I/O port on the robot. Here I am just disconnecting all the wires off the wire feeder. There's a couple wires going back to the welder, and we're going to take this wire feeder off so then we can mount it on top of the robot. Just took the torch off, and now I'm taking off the cables. There's a gas cable and then like a ground cable. So just using some basic tools. Here's just a basic look at the wire feeder. As you can see, it's a very basic system, very outdated. There's the roller track, very rusty, but I tested it and still works. Measuring everything up to mount the wire feeder to, there's a couple metric bolts right there. And here we are threading standard bolts into metric holes. You gotta love working with what you got at 2 in the morning. Just measuring up the bottom of the wire feeder so then we could shear out a plate to put on the bottom. Here we are shearing out the plate out of some scrap metal that I had laying around 1/4 inch on my Hercules 1/2 inch capacity hydraulic shear. One of my favorite tools in the shop. Flip it around and then we shear the other end. Just laying out the holes using a shitty square and an awl to scratch lines, and grabbing a center punch and center punching the holes. And here we are just drilling out the holes that we center punched on my drill press. Not the most accurate, but you know what, it's fine. Here I am test fitting the plate to make sure that it fits. I drilled them all right. It didn't really quite line up, but we ended up oversizing the holes to make it work. So, and here we have it, the first part made, the main base mount. Here we are using the wire feeder as a guide to center punch the holes. And then I went over them once again to make them a little bit deeper. Here we are drilling more holes with the drill press. I was getting kind of greedy here. I didn't use a pilot drill. I just rammed right in. Probably wrecked my drill bit, but whatever. Here we are drilling out some holes on the wire feeder itself, just enlarging them a little bit. They were too small. Real nasty stuff. It's like fiberglass. And then here we are putting it all together. The moment you've all been waiting for. Had to go get a bolt. And it goes on, and that's what it looks like now. Quite the add-on. Awesome. Here we are now taking apart the torch to try to figure out how I'm going to make this all work. My idea is that I'm going to cut the hose and the torch down. I found this block I'm going to use right here for a torch mount, so I'm drilling a hole right through the center. There's already a hole, but I'm making the hole bigger. So, and then I drill the hole through the side of it. Here I am cutting it down with the bandsaw. Same block we just drilled the holes in. Here I'm clamping it down the table, and then I take an angle grinder and I cut a slit through it, so then it will allow it to clamp down on the torch when a bolt goes through that side hole. You can kind of get a better idea when you look right here at what I'm trying to do. Here I am laying out the holes for the next piece. This is going to be the piece that actually bolts onto the end of the arm, so it's kind of critical. I still managed to mess this up, but you know, I'm using a carpenter square. We're pretty lack on tooling right now due to the plasma table being down and the machine shop's a mess. Pretty self-explanatory. Here I am drilling out the holes that I just laid out on that piece. So once again, this is going to be the piece that bolts to the end of the actual arm itself. One more saw cut to go cut the end off that part. And here we are test fitting that piece onto the end of the robot. I actually ended up screwing this piece up again. The holes didn't line up. As you can see, that bottom screw doesn't go in. I ended up just leaving it like this. Here I am saw cutting the first piece that I made, the one that grips onto the torch. Here I'm just cleaning some burrs off the end, always important. And then here I am laying out the piece and actually figuring out now how it's gonna go. So I marked it off with a pencil and take it to the saw, chop around down. Here I am setting the piece up to weld and then doing some tack welds. I just tack weld it together. I figure if it's gonna snap off, I'd rather have it break than break the robot. Here I am actually bolting the piece onto the end of the robot. So now we have our welding tip on the end of the robot. As you can see, a very high quality, precise setup. I think it will do for our application. And here we have a basic little program that I wrote just to follow the contour of this box. There's still a lot of work to do and I got a lot to learn about programming these things. Like and subscribe for part 2.